Yarik Vellin leaned on the cold metal railing of observation deck C, sipping the last lukewarm drop from his thermos. The stars beyond the reinforced glass glittered faintly, their light swallowed by the vastness of the void. He glanced at the wall-mounted chrono, hour 5. He rolled his neck, vertebrae popping quietly. His left knee ached from the shift's earlier spill in the hydroponics bay. Slippery floor, busted irrigation pipe. He hadn't even had time to ice it. Behind him, the door whooshed open. "You are still here." The voice was smooth, almost oily with a hint of nasal whine. Yarik turned. The speaker was tall, draped in a matte silver bio suit that clung to its 4 elongated limbs. Its skin was a pale lavender, and its 3 eyes blinked asynchronously. "Doctor." "Khaari," Yarik greeted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, 1 more hour." Khaari's upper limbs folded over its chest. 6 hours, it said slowly, as if repeating a number it couldn't quite believe. "Continuous duty without neuronal rest breaks, no nutrient infusion, no muscular stasis cycle." Yarik shrugged. "We call it a shift." "This is inhumane," Khaari said flatly. Yarik raised an eyebrow. "Pretty sure I am the human in this room." Khaari's gaze didn't waver. "Precisely." Yarik chuckled, then winced as his knee throbbed. "I'll be fine. Just tweaked it earlier when the hydroponics bay decided to become a jungle gym." "You have sustained injury. Minor. I'll swing by medbay after shift ends. You should be there now." "And I will, after I finish logging the sensor diagnostics." Khaari strode forward abruptly, its lower limbs moving in an odd gliding motion. "You are clearly compromised. You exhibit signs of fatigue, joint inflammation, and cognitive dulling. This is aberrant." Yarik straightened. "I've done double shifts on Mars with a busted air filter and a fractured wrist. This is nothing." "Nothing," Khaari repeated, its tone rising. "You are injuring yourself for routine maintenance. I was scheduled for this shift. I'm not about to dump it on someone else because my leg hurts." Khaari tilted its head. "Your species lacks internal preservation priorities, or maybe we just take accountability seriously." Khaari stared for a moment, then turned sharply and stalked toward the corridor. "This must be addressed at the assembly." "Be my guest," Yarik muttered under his breath, then limped back toward the console. 2 days later, Yarik walked into the assembly chamber with a noticeable limp and a datapad under his arm. The chamber was crescent-shaped, filled with representatives from over 60 species. Most of the seats were filled with tall, fluid-bodied beings, some bioluminescent, others armored in scales or smooth chitin. At the center, Khaari stood beside a projection of a human skeleton, annotated with stress indicators and a timeline of a 6-hour shift. "This," Khaari said, gesturing at the diagram, "is what the Terran designation Yarik Vellin endures as a standard operational cycle. It is a systemic failure of biological ethics." Yarik stepped forward. "With respect, Khaari, I volunteered for that shift. I wasn't forced." Khaari didn't look at him. "Consent does not negate harm. Your physiology is ill-suited for prolonged duty without adequate rest, nourishment, or recuperation." A being with translucent wings and a face like a melted mask fluttered forward. "Is this true, Yarik Vellin? That your people routinely perform tasks for 6 planetary hours without neural stasis? It's not just true on Earth. People work 8, sometimes 10 hours a day, every day, with only short breaks." A murmur rippled through the chamber. "Outrageous," hissed a representative from the Kevali cluster, its gills flaring. Yarik held up his hands. "Look, I get it sounds weird to you, but humans evolved for endurance. We're built to keep going when things get tough. It's not about ignoring pain. It's about pushing through it when the job matters." Khaari whirled on him. "At what cost?" Yarik looked down at his leg. "Sometimes, a sore knee. And if you fell and fractured your limb, I'd get it scanned, set, and rest, just like anyone else." Khaari's voice sharpened. "Yet you delayed treatment. You prioritized duty over health. That is not noble. It is reckless." Yarik didn't reply. The assembly chair, a slow-speaking being named Lurat, finally interjected. "We cannot impose Terran ethics upon interspecies protocols. Nor can we allow practices that may endanger personnel. We shall observe further." Yarik was back in the medbay the next morning, sitting on the examination table with an ice pack on his knee. Dr. Khaari hovered nearby, scanning his leg with a portable imager. Still sore? It asked. Yeah, Yarik admitted. Worse today, you delayed treatment. You made that point already. Khaari adjusted the scanner. There is moderate swelling, possible ligament stress. You will require a compression wrap and restricted mobility for 72 hours minimum. Great, Yarik muttered. Just in time for the maintenance checks on the exterior hull. You will not be performing that task. I'm cleared for. You are not. I issued a formal restriction. Cross-species medical authority grants me emergency override. Yarik stared. You're grounding me. For your own preservation. I can wrap a knee and still work. You will not, Khaari said firmly. This is not negotiable. Yarik exhaled slowly. You really think a 6-hour shift is that damaging to human physiology? Yes, you may tolerate it. You may even believe you thrive within it. But tolerating strain is not the same as thriving. It is merely surviving. Yarik looked away. That's kind of been our thing for a few thousand years, and perhaps it is time for that to change. He spent the next 3 days assisting from the command deck, monitoring hull repairs remotely while another technician handled the physical work. It chafed, sitting while others climbed the maintenance rigging, but his leg did heal faster with rest. By the 4th day, he could walk with only a slight limp. Khaari didn't let up. It began filing reports, dozens of them cataloging every instance of human overexertion aboard the station. Missed rest cycles, skipped meals, injuries minimized and brushed off. It even interviewed other crew members. Yarik ran into one of them, Lena, a maintenance officer from Nova Scotia, in the cafeteria. You talked to Khaari yet? She asked, plopping her tray down. Twice, Yarik said. Tried to explain how things work for us. Didn't go well. Let's just say Khaari and I have different definitions of acceptable risk. Lena speared a cube of synth protein. I told it about the time I ran a 10-hour emergency shift during the solar flare. Thought it was going to faint. Yarik laughed. Same. I mentioned Earth construction workers doing 12-hour days in the summer heat. It asked if we had climate control suits. I said we had hats. Lena raised an eyebrow. You didn't. I did. I don't think it's forgiven me yet. 3 more days passed. Khaari returned with a proposal. It stood before the crew of the human sector, datapad in hand. I have designed a rotational schedule. Shifts will be reduced to 4 hours, followed by mandatory rest and nutrient cycles. Additional personnel will be trained to cover high-demand roles. Yarik frowned. That's not sustainable. We don't have the manpower. Then you must request more personnel. That takes months. We don't have that kind of budget or time. Then reduce operations. Yarik folded his arms. We already run at the bare minimum. Then you are exceeding your species' capacity. That is unsustainable. One of the engineers, Malik, muttered, maybe we should just plug ourselves into the wall like the Zethar. Yarik looked at Khaari. I appreciate the concern, really, but humans aren't broken machines. We're just wired differently. You can't fix us by changing our shift clock. Khaari blinked its 3 eyes. I am not attempting to fix you. I am attempting to prevent harm. Yarik hesitated. Then he said quietly, what if harm is part of the job? Khaari didn't answer. The compression wrap itched like hell. Yarik sat on the grated floor of storage unit 12. Left leg stretched out stiffly, surrounded by open crates of coolant filters and a half-assembled pressure regulator. He was supposed to be sorting them into emergency repair kits, but the wrap kept slipping and his fingers were slick from synthetic oil. A small pile of discarded gloves fluttered beside him, each pair abandoned after becoming just as useless as the last. A narrow shadow stretched across the floor. You are not authorized for this task, Khaari said, looming in the doorway. I'm sitting, Yarik replied, not looking up, and I'm using both arms. Knees not involved, unless you count moral support. You were assigned to observational diagnostics this cycle. They didn't have the parts they needed. I figured I'd help prep the kits instead of staring at a blank console for 3 hours. Khaari stepped inside, its elongated frame gliding between crates with unsettling grace. There are programmed assist drones for this. Yeah, and they jammed on the thermal regulators last week. Burned out half a tray of fusers. This does not justify manual labor, Khaari insisted. You are not cleared for strain-intensive activity. Yarik held up a small, light component between two fingers. This weighs less than a sandwich. You are circumventing the recovery protocol. No, I'm being useful. Khaari's three eyes shifted focus in rapid succession. You equate usefulness with self-risk. Yarik leaned back against the crate behind him. I equate it with not sitting on my hands when everyone else is short-staffed. Khaari's voice dropped slightly. You did not report the wrap slippage. That is a treatment malfunction. I adjusted it. 3 times. That is not the same. Yarik tossed the regulator into the kit and picked up the next one. You want to file a report? Go ahead, I'll be right here, not lifting anything heavier than my patience. Khaari didn't answer. It stood there, motionless for several seconds. Then it stepped forward and crouched, folding its lower limbs until it was eye level with Yarik. I have reviewed over 70 human case files from the last 4 Earth decades, it said. You suffer chronic overexertion, delayed injury response, and a cultural normalization of pain suppression. Yarik squinted. You spent your off-cycle reading case files. Yes, because of me. Yes, he blinked. That's weirdly flattering, Khaari's head tilted. It was disturbing. Yarik reached for another component. So what did you learn? You are not unique. That is what alarms me most. Yarik chuckled under his breath. You expected me to be the outlier. I hoped you were. A faint tremor passed through the deck plating as a cargo shuttle docked somewhere below. The lights flickered once. Neither of them moved. I read about a steelworker from your planet's northern region, Khaari continued. He sustained a fractured vertebra and continued working for 3 days. Yarik nodded. Yeah, that happens. It should not. Maybe not, Yarik said, but sometimes people don't have the luxury of stopping. Bills don't pause for back injuries. Khaari's expression didn't change. You accept this as normal. I don't like it, but I get it. Khaari reached out and adjusted the wrap on Yarik's leg. Its fingers were longer than human ones, jointed in 3 places and moved with unsettling accuracy. You are healing slower than expected. I'm resting more than I usually do. That might be confusing your metrics. You are sarcastic, Khaari observed, only when I'm awake. The wrap tightened with a soft click. Khaari retracted its hand. You should return to diagnostics, it said. Yarik looked down at the kit. Let me finish this one. Khaari stood. 15 minutes. Then you rest. Deal. It left silently. Yarik finished the kit in 10. Later that cycle, Yarik found himself in the docking bay, watching a group of Gentari technicians unload a shipment of volatile alloy canisters from the shuttle that had docked earlier. Their translucent suits shimmered in the low light, designed to resist chemical corrosion and minor radiation bursts. He noticed one of them struggling with a misaligned mag clamp. The canister was half-tipped, its stabilizer light flashing yellow. Yarik limped over. Need a hand? He asked. The Gentari technician turned. You are unauthorized for hazardous zone support. I'm not lifting it, just helping realign the clamp. The technician hesitated, then stepped aside. Yarik crouched awkwardly and inspected the faulty latch. Looks like it's catching on the joint seam. That is consistent with prior malfunctions, the Gentari confirmed. We have requested replacements. Yeah, and they're stuck in customs on Venus Station. He tapped the release, twisted the stabilizer ring, and slid the latch into place. The canister settled with a reassuring click. The light turned green. The Gentari inclined its head. Efficient. Sometimes it just needs a human touch. Your species frequently bypasses mechanical protocol. We call it improvisation. The Gentari adjusted its grip on the next container. It is unpredictable. That's the point. They continued unloading in silence. The next shift, Yarik found himself summoned to the medical wing not by Khaari, but by the station's chief coordinator, a soft-spoken Ovleri named Thren. The Ovleri's body was mostly fluid, encased in a containment shell that shimmered with pulsing lights. It hovered a few centimeters off the floor, a soft hum accompanying its movement. You have been observed conducting tasks outside your authorized mobility range, Thren said without preamble. I never lifted anything heavier than a wrench, Yarik replied. That is not the concern. Then what is? You are a symbol of human work ethic aboard this station. Others emulate you. Yarik frowned. I'm not trying to be anyone's example. You are nonetheless visible. Khaari stood in the corner silent, Thren's lights pulsed in a slow rhythm. Your resilience is commendable, but it creates false expectations for other species. Yarik folded his arms. Are you asking me to pretend I'm less capable? We are asking you to consider the influence of your behavior. Khaari spoke then. When you push through injury, others question whether they should ignore their own limits. Yarik's voice dropped. So what? I'm not allowed to be functional while recovering. You are allowed, Thren said, but your actions ripple beyond your intent. He looked between the two of them. You want me to go limp until I'm no longer inspiring? No, Thren said. We want you to rest until you are no longer impaired. 2 days later, the station's gravity calibration system failed during a routine cycle reset. Artificial gravity dropped by 20% across the maintenance sectors, sending unsecured equipment drifting and throwing off environmental balances. Yarik didn't wait for orders. He secured his knee brace, grabbed the mag boots, and headed straight to the calibration relays. By the time Khaari arrived, he was already halfway inside the access conduit, calibrating the gyroscopic stabilizers with a manual override tool. You are not cleared for conduit entry, Khaari said from outside. Then you better write me up fast, Yarik replied. The floor plating is unstable. Your injury is not fully recovered. Then it's a good thing I'm not walking on it. Khaari moved closer. You are aware this is a critical malfunction. Exactly why I'm fixing it. If you fall, you could damage the relay alignment. If I don't fix it, the relay alignment won't matter. There was a pause. Then Khaari said, I am preparing the secondary override. If you are incapacitated, I will extract you. Appreciated, Yarik muttered, not looking back. The calibration took 37 minutes. Afterward, covered in coolant mist and with a streak of soot across his forehead, Yarik limped out of the conduit and handed Khaari the tool. You can mark that as self-endangerment if you want, he said. Khaari examined the tool. You restored 97% functionality manually. Yeah, why? Because it mattered. Khaari looked at him. There is something profoundly irrational about your species. Yarik smiled faintly. Welcome to the club. The corridor outside the hydrostatic filtration arrays reeked of melting polymer and burnt algae. A fine mist hung in the air, catching in the overhead lights like smoke that had forgotten how to rise. Yarik crouched beside a ruptured cooling manifold, sleeve rolled up, arm buried elbow deep in a mess of tangled tubing that hissed with residual pressure. Khaari stood 2 meters back, posture rigid, upper limbs folded tightly. The mist didn't seem to bother it. Nothing ever did, unless it involved humans doing something it considered biologically reckless. You are 2 days post-repair clearance, Khaari said. You should not be performing reactive maintenance on unstable systems. Yarik didn't glance up. The manifold cracked. If I hadn't been walking past when I was, half the deck would have needed evacuation. Response protocols exist for a reason. You are not the only crew member capable of emergency containment. I was the only one holding the right size torque key. Then you should have retrieved a replacement. Yarik twisted the main valve with a grunt. By the time I did that, the algae bed would be halfway to acidic bloom. We'd be breathing fish tank air for a week. That is suboptimal, but preferable to further aggravating your musculoskeletal damage. Yarik withdrew his arm. His forearm was slick with coolant. Khaari, the brace has been off for a full day. I'm cleared. I'm not sprinting marathons. I'm twisting a valve. You are twisting it with an arm that shows early signs of tendon strain. Yarik stood slowly, testing his balance. You scanned me again without asking. You leaned forward and exposed your inner joint region. It was passive, still creepy, still accurate. Yarik exhaled through his nose and grabbed a rag from his belt. Look, if it helps, I'll log 5 extra minutes in recovery tonight. Insufficient, 10, Khaari didn't reply. Its eyes blinked in an alternating pattern, like a system running diagnostics. The mist began to settle. I'm going to reroute the venting cycle, Yarik said. Unless you'd like to file an objection to that too. You will not enter the lower ducting. I will do it. Yarik blinked at it. You won't fit. I do not need to enter. My external probe armatures are sufficient. You have probe arms, Khaari extended one of its secondary limbs. A small hatch in the forearm rotated open, revealing a flexible, snake-like tool with a fine manipulator tip. Yarik squinted. That's actually kind of cool. It is standard for my species, still cool. The probe slid into the maintenance port on the wall, weaving through the conduit with practiced efficiency. Yarik leaned back, arms crossed now, watching in silence. You've never volunteered to help with repairs before, he said. I have not been permitted to. No one stopped you. You all assumed I was limited to diagnostics and biological care. I did not correct this assumption. Why not? Because I found you fascinating. Yarik blinked. Me, your entire species. You operate with an alarming disregard for personal preservation, and yet you survive. Repeatedly, it is compelling. Sounds like a polite way to say we're stubborn. You mistake compulsion for virtue. Yarik snorted. We do that a lot. The probe withdrew, clicking softly as it coiled back into Khaari's arm. Ventilation is restored. The mist will dissipate in under 5 minutes. Yarik nodded. Nice work. Khaari didn't answer. They stood in silence as the air cleared, the scent of scorched algae replaced by the sharp tang of sterilizing agents. Eventually, Khaari turned. There is something else, it said. Yarik stayed quiet, waiting. I submitted a formal proposal to the assembly, Khaari continued. Not about ours. About recognition. Recognition? You have no systemic protections aboard this station, no designated recovery cycles, no formal repair rotation. No species-specific allowances. We're not the only ones short-staffed. You are the only species who continues as if that is acceptable. Yarik looked away. We don't like being singled out. You should be, not for punishment, for protection. Yarik laughed, low and tired. You're gonna get laughed out of the chamber. I do not care. You will. I will not. He studied the alien's face, trying to read what passed for expression in those triple eyes. You're serious, he said. I am. Yarik leaned against the wall, bracing his good leg. You really think the other species will agree to give us special treatment because we're too dumb to stop working when our knees give out? I believe they will agree once they understand that your refusal to stop is not due to ignorance, but necessity. He rubbed the back of his neck. You're not wrong, but we won't ask for help. It's not pride, not really, just history. I know, Yarik frowned. How I studied it, all of it. Enough, he blinked again, slower this time. Why the interest? Because you keep surviving things you shouldn't. And then you go back and fix the damaged part of the system that caused it. Yarik grinned. So we're like cockroaches. Incorrect. Cockroaches do not repair air filtration units while limping. He laughed, properly this time. Khaari waited until the sound faded. I have included a clause, it added, suggesting that voluntary work beyond designated hours be compensated with doubled rest cycles and increased nutrient allocation. Yarik tilted his head. You want to pay us with naps and snacks. That is your culture's preferred currency. He wiped his hands on his pants. You're not wrong. Khaari's internal lights pulsed faintly. I believe the assembly will pass it, and if they don't, then I will propose it again. With more data, Yarik exhaled long and slow. You're a pain in the ass. I am thorough. They stood there a little longer, the corridor now clear, the air breathable again. Somewhere deeper in the station, a repair drone beeped as it completed a diagnostic cycle. A soft vibration passed through the floor as the docking clamps adjusted to a shift in orbital drift. Yarik pushed off the wall. His leg held steady. I'm heading to the commons, he said. I hear the snack dispenser's been refilled. You should ingest protein, not sugar. I'll compromise with a sandwich. Acceptable. He paused halfway down the corridor. Hey, Khaari. Yes, thanks. Khaari didn't blink. You are welcome. Yarik walked away, step steady now, limp nearly gone. Khaari remained in the corridor for a moment longer before turning and heading back toward the assembly wing. Datapad already compiling the next round of support documentation. 3 cycles later, the proposal passed. Not unanimously, but definitively. Human crew members received formal work accommodations, optional extended recovery rotations, and a new classification in the Interspecies Resilience Index. Adaptive critical. Yarik didn't attend the announcement ceremony. He was too busy rerouting a faulty coolant loop in the cargo wing, but he did take the next day off, and he brought Khaari a sandwich.